Hello, everybody. This is Andy Schwartman from Inside the Music with Andy Schwartman. Welcome back to part 2 of Inside the Music. Today we are continuing to talk about the 30th anniversary of the Black Crowes, Shake Your Money Maker.
Right off the top, let's say welcome and thanks again to our good friend Tony Kiefer.
Yes.
Frequent
Yes.
co-host on the program.
Thank you so much, Tony.
We value his friendship and his input whenever we do this. Makes it a lot more fun when you're with us, Tony.
Always love being here, man. I have a blast.
Thanks for being there, buddy.
So, where did we leave off on how good this album is?
Yeah, I think we talked about how strong the songs are. I think we were going to talk about the
definitely
the touring cycle. Maybe I think that's where we start kind of leading to is a touring cycle on Shake Your Money Maker.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to unpack there for sure.
Yeah. One of the acts that they toured with during the cycle was Aerosmith.
Yep.
On the Pump tour. And then another individual that they toured with was Mr. Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And I felt like a complete goofball because I was reading this, and there's a chapter in there that says Uncle Bob. Well, I was looking at it like, what the heck is that? And then it dawned on me, duh, Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, you knucklehead. What's wrong with you?
He was. They say he was just a perfect gentleman, and he was really kind to the band when they were coming up.
Yep.
Yes.
Andy, did you say in your opening notes that they played 350 shows on that tour?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I know, right?
They must have been touring in support of that record for well over a year.
Oh, well, yeah. Because they first went out with support. They were supporting a band called Junkyard, who were kind of an LA band at the time. And if you think about it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Junkyard were more in the vein. I'm not going to say they were glam by any means, but they were an LA band. You know, you probably put them on the Sunset Strip scene, and then you had the Black Crowes from Atlanta. It was total, that was a van tour for them, first time out. And it was through those shows that they started gaining attraction, I think, and it extended their tour life.
Yeah.
I also think it was touring that kind of like introduced us to the characters of Chris Robinson and Rich Robinson. I think the music was great and everything, but as soon as they got on tour, we started seeing Chris Robinson for the what would you characterize it as? The character or his antics, maybe?
It's a little bit of both, yes. A little bit of both.
I think I think they hopped on tour. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the first major tour they hopped on, I can't remember if it was before or after Plant, but it was with ZZ Top.
Yes, this is true. Their Recycler tour.
You might want to get into a little bit of what happened on that tour.
Yeah, I think they got booted off of that tour.
They did.
You said, Tony.
They did.
Chris's frequent on-stage comments speaking out against corporate sponsorship.
That's what it was, yes.
And they were given frequent warnings to knock it off or they'd get kicked off the tour.
Yeah, the tour was sponsored by Miller Lite. Mm-hmm. And like you said, every night he kind of go out there and, make his feelings known. So
yeah. I think real early in their career, too, he didn't shy away from his support of the legalization movement, too, So you saw his interviews and heard him, on the radio and whatever, in interview situations, not shying away from what was another controversial stance that he wasn't really afraid to take.
Yeah. The great thing about Chris and the worst thing about Chris was he's the ultimate front man.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, Andy, you talked about too, then they won. It didn't stop them. They got controversy or whatever. And what's the saying? Bad press? Or what's the saying about it? Bad press.
Bad press always Oh
I
crap!
think
what
it's
is it?
there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. There
No
you
such
go.
thing as
There you
bad
go. There you
press.
go. I was having a complete brain fart.
It's
I hate
early.
those.
Yeah.
They suck.
You know, they went from ZZ Top to the Aerosmith, like you said, the Aerosmith Pump tour,
Hmm.
and it just kind of continued. You know, it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, Aerosmith on Pump were on their sober tour. They
Yeah.
no drugs, no alcohol permitted by anybody, including
Right.
the opening band.
Hmm.
Do you remember any of that stuff that went down with Black Rose, or particularly Chris and Aerosmith?
I just remembered that they they were on tour with Aerosmith, and like you said, Chris's hijinks were such that basically Joey Kramer was watching them from the wings, and he told their manager basically get them to leap off or get them off of our tour, and they pulled the plug on the Crows basically,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. But I mean, for a 20-something like himself at the time, what a goofus, man.
Did they get booted off the Aerosmith tour too?
Yes.
Well,
Wow.
there was an interview done with Chris, and anytime Chris would do an interview, he would kind of shoot his mouth off, and he had talked
Yeah.
about how he preferred a 70s Aerosmith, which is not an unpopular opinion. But then he went on to say that he would prefer Aerosmith to be on drugs, and kind of like ripped on the whole non-drug alcohol tour that they were on.
Mhm.
And all that stuff started getting back to the Aerosmith camp. And I don't know. I think they were taken off early. I think they got replaced sooner than they were supposed to on that tour.
Yeah.
So again, you know,
I think many young people say and do foolish things, and you have a character like Chris Robinson, who was maybe a real extreme version of an outspoken young guy that didn't really think through the possible repercussions of his public statements.
Or his mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what's funny is, and I think it was November of 1990, I saw them on that tour. They were at Bogart's with the Four Horsemen, if you guys have heard of them.
Yes.
Andy, it's not the Four Horsemen that you and I saw, the Metallica tribute,
Nuts.
but a different group that only made a couple of records back in the day.
Oh, okay.
When
my
the
bad.
Crows were on that first tour and they announced that show at Bogart's, it was the same night that a number of my friends went up to Dayton, Ohio to see Bob Dylan. And
Wow.
I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I had already been to see him a few times by 1990. And of course, I've seen him many, many times since then. But that night, all my friends, they didn't know who the Black Crowes were. Like, I can't believe you're going to Bogart's to see some band you've never heard of when you could be going with us to see Bob Dylan. So that's how I ended up seeing the Crowes on their first tour at Bogart's.
you wouldn't
Nice.
imagine the Crows or the Four Horsemen. Definitely, those two bands definitely don't seem to match up on paper.
No.
Yeah, and
They
I think
don't.
that might have been, at least in part, that double bill might have been a result of them just being on the same label
Yeah.
at the time. So, Andy, you want to wrap up part 2 here? We'll take a short break, and then we'll do part 3. Maybe get into some more of our thoughts about the tour.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, thank you, and stay tuned. Part 3 will be here shortly.
Great job, Andy.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Or
again.
thank you. My bad.